Could it be the biggest protest since the collapse of communism in Poland? The pro-European organisers certainly think so. Hundreds of thousands in Warsaw have marched against the new Conservative government, which they accuse of damaging democracy. Greeks have brought the country to a standstill with a 48-hour strike against plans to reform their pensions. Meanwhile, Greece's finance minister warns his European counterparts that Greece risks becoming their failed state. And Canada's wildfire has doubled in size in the last 24 hours and could do the same in the next. That's according to the authorities battling the blaze. They gave a press conference as evacuations continue from the town of Fort McMurray. Hello, thanks for watching France 24. I'm Belle Lupton. Now to our top story. One of the biggest protests since the collapse of communism in Poland 27 years ago is taking place in Warsaw. Hundreds of thousands have filled the streets today. They're expressing their support for the EU and opposition to a conservative new government, which they say is eroding democracy. But as Shirley Sitbon explains, it wasn't the only demonstration in Poland today.
If Saturday's protest was a test, Poland's opposition passed. Its latest demonstration gathered more people than any of the ones held over the past 6 months, since the right-wing government took office. Waving European, Polish, and flags reading KOD, the name of a new opposition group, protesters denounced the government's policies, including a law that weakens Poland's constitutional court.
We are here today to say that we will not allow the nightmare of authoritarian rule. We will not allow the violation of democracy, the violation of the rule of law and of the Constitution. We are against it.
Government opponents were not the only ones marching in Warsaw Saturday. Supporters of the ruling Law and Justice Party were also out, but in lower numbers, even though the party remains popular. Unlike the opposition that calls for a quick integration of European values, government supporters criticize the EU, saying its influence weakens Poland. Europe was at the heart of a third protest held Saturday afternoon in the same area, but that march had been planned far ahead. The Schuman Parade is held every year, celebrating Poland's accession to the EU 12 years ago.
Now, Greece's finance minister is calling on Europe to unlock its next bailout instalment, warning of the price of a failed state if talks next week go nowhere. But Greeks say even this reform plan goes too far. They've been striking for 48 hours, bringing the country to a standstill. No trains, boats or public transport in Greece since Thursday. The reform package would see Greece's generous pension system reduced, as well as changes to taxes. It's being debated in the Greek Parliament this weekend before a vote on Sunday night. Now, for more on that, let's bring in Francesco Saraceno, an economist at Sciences Po University here in Paris. He's on the phone for us. And Francesco, how important is it that Greece and the EU managed to renegotiate its debt in their talks next week?
It's actually very important. It's actually the center of the problem. If there is no debt renegotiation, I can see no real way out of the Greek crisis. And so it's very important. I'm not sure it will happen because Germany is still opposed, even if today the Vice Chancellor, Sigmar Gabriel, the head of the SPD, has said that himself that negotiation is necessary. But the finance minister, Schäuble, is opposed, and it depends if he has the strength to block the negotiation. But it's clear that without a renegotiation of the Greek debt, there will be no way out of the crisis. They can vote austerity measures, they can implement them, but this will not solve their problems.
And of course, voices in Germany opposed. But on the Greek side, politically, Greece's Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras is in a precarious position. He's hanging onto a majority in Parliament by just 3 seats. However, he does seem committed to be pushing through these reforms, even if they're going to hurt some of the people.
No, of course. I mean, he has no. The problem of Tsipras since last July is actually that he has no choice. So if you have no choice, you have to do whatever you can. And of course, he was since then trying to put in place what we called at the time a parallel agenda, meaning pushing the austerity reforms that were asked in order to avoid that he goes bankrupt, and at the same time trying to use the little room of maneuver that he had to implement more socially sensible measures, so something more similar to the original program he had. But of course, he's walking a very, very narrow path, and his majority in the House is thin, as you said, and every measure that passes brings him a little bit away from his original program, and so it makes him weaker. But the problem is that there is no alternative until Europe doesn't change its approach to the Greek crisis. Tsipras has no alternative, so he's really doing whatever he can, and it's not much, unfortunately, for him.
And of course, a lot of people next week will be looking for slightly more than a short-term sticking plaster solution in those talks. Francesco Saraceno there from Sciences Po University. Thank you very much. Now, London's new mayor has been sworn in less than 48 hours after a bitterly fought election. Sadiq Khan is the first Muslim mayor of a major Western capital, and his message reflected that. He said he'd be a mayor for people of all faiths and those of none. The Labour son of a bus driver beat the son of a billionaire Conservative Zach Goldsmith in Thursday's vote. Let's take a listen to the new mayor now.
I'm determined to lead the most transparent, engaged and accessible administration London has ever seen, and to represent every single community and every single part of our city as mayor for all Londoners. London's new mayor speaking there.
Now, 2 members of a NATO-led mission in Afghanistan have been shot dead in the south of the country. The gunmen were wearing Afghan uniforms and were themselves killed during the attack. The incident comes as NATO's commander reviews plans to cut US troops in Afghanistan. The nationalities of the victims have not yet been released. The Israeli army says its aircraft have hit 2 Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip in response to rocket fire. This on the 4th day of the worst flare-up of violence since the deadly conflict of 2014. Since Wednesday, mortar fire by Palestinian fighters and Israeli airstrikes and shelling have raised concerns for the future of an informal truce that's held since the end of the 50-day war. Now, Canada's wildfire could double in size over the next 24 hours. That's according to Canadian authorities, who said the fire had already grown by 50% in the last 24 hours. More than 1,500 square kilometres have been destroyed since the flames started last Sunday. The provincial premier gave this update a little earlier.
I know the people of Fort McMurray want to get back into their homes as quickly as possible. And I am hoping we'll be able to give you a sense of when you can go home shortly. But as I've said before, the return won't be in coming days. The gas has been turned off, the power grid has been damaged, and large portions of the city don't have power right now. The water is not currently drinkable. There are no stores open, there's a great deal of hazardous material to be cleaned up, and many other things to be done before the city is safe for families to go home.
Alberta's premier speaking there. Now, so far, the wildfire hasn't caused any deaths. Kyle Brown has a little bit more on the volunteers who've come to the region to help.
Residents continue to flee the fires raging across the western province of Alberta. On the way, there's help at hand. Canadians have sent donations, and volunteers from nearby have set up food stations for those traveling the hundreds and even thousands of kilometers to reach safety.
These are the cookies. These are all veggie food and juice. And this is the muffins.
So free food for them. It is from Sikh community.
This couple brought a trailer load of water. The fire has already forced more than 80,000 people to evacuate the area since the blaze erupted earlier this week. More than 1,000 firefighters are battling 45 separate blazes across the province.
That's it from me for now, but don't go anywhere. I'll be back in 20 minutes with plenty more news and analysis for you.